Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the Sword and Shield stuff, go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using that code OmniPoke. For today's video, we are looking at the top 8 decks from Malmo, and as well as the breakdown of the Day 2 decks. So we have almost all the lists, we just don't have Magnus's 60, but fortunately I got to play against him in the tournament, so I can give you a little bit of a spiel when we look at Bastion's list and talk about a few differences that Magnus was playing in his own build. But you can see here that it was a bit of ADP-zation domination. You may also notice that I wasn't in the top 8. I had a winning in and I threw on stream. So there potentially could have been a 4th ADP-zation in the top 8 if I wasn't an idiot. So yeah, clearly a very, very strong archetype. We'll start by looking at the winning 60 from Tord Reklev. And Tord and the Limitless guys, they brought a very different engine to ADP-zation from what we'd known previously. At OCIC, some of the most successful builds were all tag call based lists, but here we're seeing energy spinners, pure basic energies, and acrobikes being introduced to the 60. I think this does make a lot of sense when you look at it on paper, having more acrobike for turn 1 dig potential, extra discard synergy with metal energies. Acrobike actually has incredible synergy with Primate Wisdom. Not only can you put things like energies to the top of your deck to then discard for your metal source of value, but you can just put excess, Zation, or cards that you don't need in certain matchups to the top of your deck, and then Acrobike immediately afterwards, and then you have like a free discard and then an extra dig into your deck. So Oranguru makes Acrobike an even better card. You take away most of the drawbacks of Acrobike and actually give it extra plus side, which is just insane, really. And of course, unlike Tag Call, it gets you a supporter turn 1 that you can't use. Acrobike and Cherish Ball getting you access, well, the Cherish Balls as a straight swap for tackles, basically, in a lot of these ADP lists, means that you can go ahead and get Dedenne and draw yourself some cards. So it actually makes a lot of sense here. Energy Spinner as well gets insane value if you're the person going second. Obviously, you will still choose to go first as ADP all the time, but one great thing for mirror matches is at least when you get to go second and you hit a spinner, you can get really, really good value from deck thinning, getting yourself not only your turn 1 attachment, but also your turn 2 attachment, sometimes for ADP, if you do want to go down that route, even though you are going second. Or you can just go ahead and get a bunch of metals out your deck that you can then just bin, and then suddenly all your sources are live for aggrozation plays. So yeah, a lot of things I like about this list. The stadium and tool counts are pretty interesting. The double frying pan forces oftentimes your opponent to alter creation, at least for 1 attachment, so they can get through your Zation Vs, or they need to find their labs, and obviously that's bounceable, so you can punish it later on if they don't go for their ADP GX attack. Also, the frying pans really help out against fire decks. It also even helps out against Mewtwo, because Mewtwo was mainlining 1 copy of Victini V. Obviously, Tord and the Limitless guys were very well-versed with how the Mewtwo matchup went, and how oftentimes the Mewtwo player will try and force your opponent to knock out a Mewtwo, then a Victini, then another Mewtwo, right? To make life difficult for them, because oftentimes Mewtwo will only allow the ADP player time to use the GX attack for 1 attachment, especially because sometimes the Mewtwo player can deny the GX attack altogether with the Latios GX attack on their own end. So having the frying pans essentially meant that the Victini V was less viable. Also, of course, Ability Zard came second in the tournament, so frying pans in general, definitely a decent call right now. There was a decent amount of Ability Zard day 1, as well as Magcargo GX, which actually came out with, I think, like 20 or 30 people played at the tournament, which is really crazy. I don't think it was expected to be like 70% of the day 1, 7% of the day 1 field, but actually turned out to be like that, which is really, really incredible. So yeah, just double Shrine as the only damage modifier can be a little bit risky going forward, where things like Mewtwo and Pikarom could start adopting Chaotic Swell in their list. But right now, there was no harm in it for this exact tournament, and having multiple Shrine does help out, specifically against Pikarom for getting things in range, even through resistance, which is very important. Another thing that I really like in the list is the Resource Management Oranguru. I actually played it in my top 16 list. I found Oranguru really, really helpful For resource management against control, of course, it means that they can't just cheese your custom catchers out of your deck and then you can suddenly lose the game. Also, it means if your opponent does get fortunate on early crushing hammers before you get your Alter Creation GX attack off, or if they just get rid of enough water energies that you're never able to Ultimate Ray in the first place or whatever, you always have the resource management backup approach where you don't even need to take a prize. You can just recycle your deck all the time, which is really nice. You can try and trap your opponent's stuff. Actually, something I did on one of my stream games. I trapped an opposing Zacian from a mill player. I was playing labs in my own list, so they couldn't air balloon out. But then I was able to just force them to deck out, which was pretty fun. So yeah, Oranguru is great for the mill matchup, but also Profound Knowledge is very good against Obstagoon. Doing 60 and Confuse, obviously Obstruct means you're doing 0, but you still Confuse, and that's a really big way to beat lone Obstagoon. So that's very awesome. Obviously, you could just use the resource management again here to just get more custom catchers, but essentially having the threat of Confusion means that you can beat lone Goon strategy, which is just amazing, to be honest. So that one card fixing 2 potential awkward matchups was something Tord wanted to do, and also something that I saw value in as well. So yeah, definitely a big fan of that. A few other things to note from this list: there is no Absol and no Reset Stamp, so you are definitely a get ahead, stay ahead kind of deck. Just try and let your efficient racing do the trick here. I can see the implementation of possibly at least Absol, and if you're not sold on the 2 Mani count, possibly weaving in things like the 1 Mani, the double stamp, something like that overall. So this is a no defense mode list at all. Get ahead, stay ahead, draw well with the deck. I think, obviously, going forward in this format, a lot of people will be adopting this list, but a few things to bear in mind. The double shrine can be punished by Chaotic Swell in the future, so weaving in Vitality Band and stuff like that could be important once again. Also, things like Stamp and Absol could become more relevant. Because for me, I mean, Absol was one of the first cards in my 60 because it's great in Mirror, it's great against Mewtwo, it's great against Ability Zard, it's great against Baby Bland, it's great against Pikarom. Everything's playing Jirachi right now, so for me, potentially like 1 Acrobite can come out the list and you just put an Absol in immediately. That would be like literally the first action I would do with this list. But everything else looks absolutely amazing. This engine seems to hugely outweigh Tag Call. Having played now like 15 rounds with ADP Zacian and seeing the downsides of Tag Call, especially when you go first, you don't have extra push potential for turn attachments, and it's only getting you, like, it's thinning supporters like in the opening turns, but then like in the late game, the Tag Calls are just dead cards. They're just things that you throw away with Quick Balls or like Research away or Great Catcher away or whatever. Whereas these Acrobites and Cherish Balls, even in the late game, they're like great to get off of things like Reset Stamps. So yeah, overall this seems to be like a much better engine, and I can foresee most people taking this approach over the Tag Call build in future. The only real thing I would give credit to in the Tag Call plus Guzhala builds in comparison to the Acrobike Spinner list is that you eat up more spaces with the Acrobike Spinner package, and that means you can't have as many defensive tools. So if you want to have more defensive options, potentially that could be an option. Medi Haffy came second with his very innovative list. It's very different. It's got itself its own version of Chaotic Swell and Big Charm here. I actually played against him in Mirror, and this combination, when I was the one trying to put down things like Shrine Vitality Band, made life very awkward for me to deal with his ADP, and it meant that I was usually just trying to gust around him the entire game, which obviously comes with its own headache. He's just playing 2 Guzmahala and has a large variety of tools, 5 different one-of tools, so he's really gone in on the Guzmahala package and not playing any Sinlin. Personally, if I was playing Tackle, I would probably play 1 Sinlin, but a lot of interesting tools going on here. He had plenty of options, the Frying Pan for fire stuff, and for somewhat in Mirror, had Vitality Band and Shrine and Zigzagoon, so plenty of ways to manipulate damage the way he wanted. Air Balloon can be nice for getting around Absol, but also is nice just on your Zacian for retreating as well, so all sorts going on here. You can see, again, choosing not to play Absol. This is wild for me. Like, Absol was one of my favorite cards all weekend, but just not going down that route at all. Got himself double stamp in here, no copies of Mani, so no shuffle against control matchups is quite interesting for me. But at the same time, he has coin flip catches as well as custom, so that in its own right can help you beat a lot of control players, so something to bear in mind. And the Captivating Wink Morwal GX was implemented not only by Medi, by actually quite a few players in the event. It was like the worst kept secret tech that anyone's ever come up with. But yeah, having this Captivating Wink means that you can, against things like Pikarom, you can get Dedenes out of their hand and ruin some early game setup, which can sometimes be nice. But the main reasons why it's in here is against Control and against Obstagoon. You can force extra prizes onto their board for them to gust and take prizes on. So yeah, it's excellent against Control and the Goons deck, again trying to stop the lone Goon strategy, stop the Virizion GX approach just by winking them all back into play. But also you have a bit of cheese factor where you can sometimes be like, well, maybe their hand can be in a bad spot if I just Captivating Wink at the right time. And bear in mind that the Wily Bite attack is for just a metal and a colorless, so it's a little bit easier to get towards knockouts. With this ADP GX attack damage buff, you can actually reach on things like the Dene GX for a one-shot if they have a full bench, and you can also knock out things like Victini V and Heatran as well, again, if they have that full bench and you have that Alter Creation GX off. So when you are up against some of these fire matchups where it becomes a very fast back and forth, like an ADP normally gets knocked out immediately after using Alter Creation GX if they've drawn pretty well. And having a 2-energy attacker that can respond on some of their fire stuff makes it a lot easier and a lot less resource intense for you to then win 2 KOs back to back after using your GX attack. So yeah, I think the Morwal does have a lot of merit. I can see it going into a lot of lists in the future. But yeah, another creative list from Medi overall, having the tanking options in a mirror map situation. Also having Swell to help out against Pikarom by stopping them, just putting down Thunder Mountain to sort of slow down their tempo can also be pretty valid as well. Swell was a card that I was definitely playing around with before the event, just in my own 60 as well. We see Brian bring yet another build, so we're seeing so many different ways that this list can succeed. Once again, we're seeing that Morwal come into the list. This time we are seeing Absol Fione. These are 2 cards that I played in the tournament. Fione didn't perform great for me. It was an okay card for sure. But it's pretty standard to see this alongside things like Custom and Great Catcher. Got the Absol in here. Got the double reset stamp. This is the exact supporter engine I played. I think it's the exact Pokemon line that I played, actually. No, I didn't play Morwal. I played Oranguru and I played Fourth Zacian. But everything else I played exactly the same as Brian. And yeah, the energy count I played the same. Yeah, this is like 2 cards different from what I played. I played 1 board, 1 shrine. I played 3rd Tag Call and 4th Zacian, and then I changed the Morwal tech for an Oranguru tech, and then we played the same 60. So yeah, me and Brian were on similar wavelengths, I guess. And it clearly got very far in the tournament. He got super unlucky in the top 4. I actually casted that game. Because David, one of the Limitless casters, ended up having a bad throat and basically couldn't talk anymore, so they just got me in to help out in top 4. But Brian, like, super Lego'd in top 4, whereas Todd just, like, hit the nuts against him, so pretty much a very unfortunate way to end his run, but yeah, a solid list overall. If you still like the Tag Call engine, like I said, Brian's list is one that you can adopt if you prefer the defensive package of having Absol Stamp. It can really disrupt things like Pikarom that are usually trying to tempo out on you. It can help disrupt against things like Blounds as well, which has done very well this weekend. So if you do want to have more defensive options just to fit your playstyle, you can go down this route with Brian's 60 as well. So 3 very different ways really of seeing ADPization. All of them successful, so lots of testing for you guys to get going on with all this stuff. We then see Sander's control list. It is very, very innovative, and he has many different explanations for why he plays a lot of different things. He's actually done a really, really excellent post about it in one of the Facebook groups, so make sure you go ahead and get that or read that article. It's basically like a whole article that he's written in a Facebook post. So I'm not going to do it justice to really talk through what's going on here, but he's essentially merged the hand control mini package and the energy denial package that we've seen with the Pidgeotto control, alongside the draw engine of Cincino control, where you're using the Cincinos and Intrepid Sword most importantly. You'll notice that he's got a thin Cincino line and a high count of Zacian V, because at the end of the day, getting your hand advantage is the most important thing. That's why you're seeing less impact on, or less reliance on, resource managing, just 2 copies in here, because more often than not, you'd prefer to end your turn on an Intrepid Sword, using things like Sinlin and Lusamine to recover your supporters in the mid-game, right? So that's kind of the concept here. You try and attack your opponent's hand with a combination of Persian and Pawniard. Pawniard and Mars can be used when your opponent has a low hand size. Persian punishing people for Intrepid Sword passing against you, which is pretty good. Again, having the hammers and the dolls in here, definitely nice to help out against ADP. You got Will to try and flip some heads. You got Fabbers that can get rid of pesky stadium cards, as well as special energies, which is nice. Wondrous Labyrinth, again, leaning into this energy denial approach that he can take. Got the Power Plant in here as well that can sometimes stick against Mewtwo. So, yeah, plenty of options. When you're playing the Lusamine thing, you can always like win the stadium more and then stick one of these in the mid to late game, which is just pretty crazy. So, yeah. I'm not going to go too far in depth with this list, because obviously Sander is the mastermind behind this, and he can describe it way better than I can, but he's made it work. You can see a few games of him on stream playing it as well. So if you want to get a better idea of how to play that 60, you can see some of that from Sander. Stefan with Baby Blounds doing very well. Baby Blounds didn't do too well at the OCIC, but this is an archetype that Stefan's been fond of previously. In the old format, he was playing Green Blounds to good success. This time we're seeing the Jirachi build take over with a lot of 2-prize Pokemon going on. He's got 2 V Pokemon in Victini and Cramorant. Cramorant can be an early game search option if you're really bricking, and can also be a great way to close games just on 3 energy. Basically, 1 Fire Crystal wins you the game. With a Welder play, you can knock out Dedenes quite easily. That can all weave into your game plan. You'll notice he plays no Gust whatsoever, so Cramorant is your only real access to your opponent's bench, as well as Fion, of course. You'll have Victini V, obviously very good. Again, if you're missing Welders, you can try and use Spreading Flames to set things up, and for just, again, a Welder, you can knock out things like, Zacian, which is a big deal. You've got your Dedenne in here, which we haven't seen much of. A lot of people with Baby Blounds were trying Zacian in their own list, but instead we're seeing Dedenne GX in here for some more late-game pushes, I guess you could say. Oricorio to help bounce back after things get knocked out. And Absol's a really interesting include. Obviously, it's a card that I'm fond of, but I haven't seen much of in the Cephalon, because normally you consider yourself to be very combo-based, but I guess it's one of those cards that whenever you see it, you basically put it down, because it's always going to get you some value, which is cool. He's also got the Ultra Forest Cart Envoy, so he wants to beat Lone Goon strat, which is really interesting. He's got the Stadium Nav, which I was a big fan of whenever I was playing Baby Blound, so that's cool to see. Also got the Adventure Bag to try and fish out the Lucky Egg or Beast Bringer to sort of mix and match, which is nice, as well as giving you extra outs to switching with your escape boards, which is very cool. And rather than playing 4 physical Baby Blounds, he's playing 3 and 1 Ordinary Rod. So it looks like with this list, with the amount of 2 prizes that it has, really it tries to Fireball Circus like once or twice in the game only. And then you weave in other attacks like a Burst GX attack here or a Cramorant Snipe there. And it really means that you're not all in on trying to Fireball Circus every single turn of the game. And obviously the Beast Bringer means that against ADP Zacian, you can just knock out the ADP for 4 prizes, and then you'll set up the game either with a Cramorant Snipe or with like a response on a Victini V, stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of things that I can see why this has done so well. I'm not certain on the Ultra Forest Cart Envoy. You've got Cart Envoy and Palpad. Is that enough to win you the matchup? Possibly. You've also got Fion and Cramorant, so must be something that he's experimented with. Against Control, I think you're trying to just Spreading Flames and Energy Burst a bunch of the time. I think that's how you're meant to try and play the matchup. But yeah, overall, very interesting list. And Stefan, once again, proving that he is crazy consistent in European tournaments and just tournaments in general. We see another Baby Blacephalon make top 8s. This one is playing Mew, so I imagine it has a slightly better time against Pikarom. That's something that surprises me in Evenov's list, actually not playing a Mew. It seems like an important card for the Pikarom matchup. I guess you're basically just trying to say that you can Fireball Circus before they put enough energies onto a Pikarom, which I guess is a fair enough argument. Once again, this is employing the Beastbringer Adventure Bag package. This time it has Acrobikes. It's got Great Catcher as an option to Gust rather than having a Fion in here. And this is kind of more similar to what we've come to expect with the one Zacian for some early game draw options. But yeah, another means of Baby Blounds doing well once again. So you can try and mix and match between the two lists if there's anything you would prefer from the others. And yeah, we'll end off with 2 Pikaroms making top 8. I think at OC, the best placing one was like top 16, but we have seen it push on and do quite well. Bastion here with the 4 Prof Research, 3 Voltner-based list, high count of E-Switch, trying to just pop off with Full Blitz, which makes a lot of sense. Still has a couple stamps in here. It's got Zapdos for early pressure. It's got no customs, which is interesting. That's really interesting. So just playing 2 Great Catchers and Fion for Gust. So he's gained a lot of spaces here just to have double Vit Band to help out against things like Mewtwo, potentially help out against Mirror as well. Just basically to have more push potential against stuff. So that's a really interesting 60 overall, I think. Not seeing custom catches in Pikarom is something I don't think I've ever seen, really. Having a double Coco V is actually a big deal for pressurizing Zacian as well, so I think that's a very good call overall. Obviously, Zacian's public enemy #1, so it makes sense to play double Coco V to make life awkward for them. Again, this matchup is one for the ADP side, where oftentimes you can only afford to GX for 1 attachment, just because of the tempo of Pikarom, and sometimes even then you can't even use your ADP if you have like sloppy opening turns. So yeah, that's interesting. I think this is very, very different from Magnus's 60. Obviously, we can't see his exact 60, but just anecdotally, he played Swell, and he played at least 1 Big Charm. I would assume 2 Big Charms. He played Pokemon catchers as well as custom catchers, I believe. It may have just been coin flip catchers and great catchers, so don't quote me on that. But he definitely played coin flip catchers. I actually don't think he played any defensive tools. I don't think he played stamps. I don't think he played Marnies for hand disruption. I think he was all in on just hard draw and hitting that full blitz. So both Bastion and Magnus have made cuts to try and just be consistent full blitz as quickly as possible. So I think that's just how you have to play Pikarom now. You just have to be the highest tempo deck that we have available to the format, basically, in order to be successful. So yeah, that's what we're looking at overall. Now let's have a look at the breakdown from Limitless. Jack has published this, and he's got a big wall of text there for you to read if you want to have a bit more in-depth, some fun facts and stuff about the tournament itself. But the overall breakdown is that in the top 32, it was an exact 32 cut, by the way, because it was a smaller regional. There were 12 ADP Zacian decks. Myself, Jack, and Bert, all from TCG, were among them playing Zacian. There were 4 Pikaroms, 4 Baby Blounds, 3 Ability Zards or Fireboxes, 3 Magcargos, which I think is the surprise of the tournament, really. Magcargo was one of those archetypes that I enjoyed, and a few of my other Complexity teammates ended up piloting. None of them actually getting that far in the tournament, but Magcargo itself, I respect, and I do think it has legs. I also think it can quite easily challenge ADP Zacian. I played 2 Magcargos day 1 and beat them both, but I think I got the good rub of the green, and I know the matchup very well because I've already played a bunch of Magcargo myself, so I know what they're trying to do, so I know how to disrupt them and stuff like that. So yeah, I can foresee Magcargo staying. Obviously, it's got options against control, because you can sometimes even tech in 1 Bellelba into your own 60, so you can mill them when they get down to a low deck size, and obviously you can smooth over and Primate Wisdom the Bellelba into your hand, and usual Cincino control lists don't have hand disruption, so you can beat them that way with a GX attack plus your own Bellelba, which can really surprise control. Obviously Magcargo is pretty decent against the Obstagoon matchup as well, and you are actually pretty okay against things like Pikarom, Mewtwo, and ADP Zacian, so it's just things like Baby Blounds and Firebox that I think are your main downfalls overall. Maybe Mally as well, that's always a little bit awkward, but yeah. And then we have a few one-offs. There was a Naga Chess kind of deck, which I'm still looking forward to seeing the list for on Limitless. I sat like close to him a couple times, but never actually got to see like the full extent of his list. There was Cincino Mill, There was obviously Sanders' control build as well. There was a Big Blounds, which I think was quite focused on Island Challenge amulets, which will be interesting to look into. One Mewtwo Welder, as well as one Mali Mewtwo as well. So Mewtwo overall, I think, was underplayed a lot, and I actually think that goes in the favor of ADPization. That might be part of the reason why it was so dominant, because I think Mewtwo is just naturally one of the more challenging matchups for the deck. So I wouldn't be surprised to see more Mewtwo coming into the format to try and answer some ADPization overall. I do think ADPization is probably more consistent than the Mali Toolbox kind of deck. So I think that matchup is still going to be close, and obviously the 60 that Tord played was having the frying pans to make it a little bit more difficult, so maybe even things like Welder Mewtwo has to start incorporating things like Big Charm and Swell into their list. One thing that I've been trying just over the last couple of days, after seeing how well ADPization's done, is trying out cutting Hearth from Mewtwo and just going to a high Flint count, and then you get to play Swells and you get to play Big Charms, so you stay out of range of Shrine Ticks and stuff like that from an ADP. So maybe that's something worth exploring going forward with Mewtwo. Just a little bit of food for thought. But yeah, overall, I think ADP is just going to be a front runner. We have plenty of different builds that we can go off of, but the moral of the story is that the deck is just got a very, very strong game plan. If you're trying to play aggressive, like Tord's list, if you're trying to have some defensive tools like Brian, or if you're just trying to beat Mirror with Gust and tank ability like Medi, all of the options sound great. So let me know your best way to play ADPization. Do you think it will continue to have this sort of amount of success in tournaments going forward? I believe it's Toronto next weekend. Because, I think there was 15 of day 2 in OCIC and now 12 in top 32 of Malmo. Are we going to see just that amount in most tournaments going forward until we see the next couple new sets come out? Who knows? I'll hear it all down below though, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.